Good morning from the United States. I'm not sure if you can hear me. We will be starting in about 20 minutes.
Lisa, for the Q&A session, would you want people to drop their questions in the chat box or actually turn on the mic?
Thank you for asking that. I actually added a slide at the end where they can type them in and we can see them all come up so I can take them at that point. And then if I want to ask somebody to unmute their mic, I'll do it then.
All right, perfect.
We're going to have fun. Hope everyone's ready. We're going to have fun. And Aisha, when we wrap up, do you want me to have it sent back over to you to wrap up, or would you like me to close?
You can conclude, Lisa.
I can close?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just thank everybody and leave the slides up. That's fantastic. Great. Got a great group coming in. This is exciting.
Lisa, you have a beam of light from up above.
Oh, do I really?
I'm in Ilham's office looking for that beam, by the way.
Is that better? Hold on. We'll go like this.
No, it's good. It's a good thing.
It's a good. There's no light. I don't know what you're talking about. Just a divine intervention, I guess. Okay. I just want to make sure it's not distracting. It's okay?
No, it's not.
Okay, good. Yeah.
I think she means you're glowing.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Whoever said that, you can call me and tell me that every day. I appreciate that. That's part of the fun now with everyone with remote presentations. Everyone gets to see the behind the scenes before everything starts. It's great.
Looks nice.
All right. Should we start?
Ready when you are. We've got a few more people coming in and I think it's be great. We've got a good group.
Yeah, I'll keep letting people in as I see them, okay?
Wonderful. Thanks, Michelle.
Of course. Have fun, everybody.
Great. Thanks.
Thank
Will
you.
do.
Ilham, if you would just let me know when to start, that would be great.
Let's do it. We're ready.
All right. So good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you all to the third webinar series, Igniting Creativity and Innovation. This webinar is going to be for an hour and a half. The last 30 minutes is designated to Q&A session. As Lisa mentioned, you can type in your questions. So please join me to welcome our renowned speaker, Mrs. Lisa Bodwell. She's the founder and CEO of Future Think. Lisa ranks among the top 50 speakers worldwide and is a bestseller author for not only one, but 2 books, Kill the Company and Why Simple Wins. Bodwell brings a compelling perspective to a sought-after topics. of simplification and innovation to over 100,000 people each year. She has inspired executives at top-ranked organizations such as Google, Cisco, and Citigroup, just to name a few. Bodwell has contributed her expertise to a variety of media. She is a monthly contributor to Forbes and frequently appears in other media, including Fast Company, Wired, The New York Times, Bloomberg Business Week, Harvard Business Review, The Huffington Post, Fox News, and CNN. She also teaches innovation, or she has taught innovation in 2 universities, American University and Fordham University, and has a TED Talk as well on the same topic. I hope this introduction has got you excited to what is coming up next. Before I hand it to you, Lisa, this is a reminder to all of you, if you have any technical issues, please email Michelle. Lisa, the platform is yours.
Oh, thank you so much for the kind introduction, Aisha, and welcome everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Bodell, and I am so pleased to be with you here today to talk to you about a topic that is very close to my heart, and that's the topic of innovation. And we're going to have a very interactive, fun time today. I'm going to ask everybody, if you can, to please have your phones nearby, because we're going to do a little interaction through our phones. So I just want to say that right up front, have your phone nearby, because we're going to be using them to do some polling, some word clouds, and some other really cool stuff. Now, my speech today is going to be broken into 2 parts. The first part is about the mindset for innovation. And we're going to talk about things like, how do you detect change and why is that important? We're going to talk about what holds you back from better changing within your work environment. And it's probably not the reasons you think. We're also going to talk about how other organizations really embrace or create a culture of change and how you can learn from that too. So that's the mindset piece. The second part is going to be the toolkit piece. I am a very practical person, and I know that everybody here is very productive, is a leader, wants to get things done. And so I'm going to make sure that in the toolkit piece, you leave with many techniques, in fact, over 20 of them, that you can use to start making innovation the way that you work every single day. You'll leave feeling much more creative, much more innovative, and I promise that you'll learn a lot of things that are brand new. So let's get started, and let's talk about some of that interactivity that I was mentioning before. So what we're going to do, just to get everyone set up, and I'm going to do the same thing, I'm going to ask everybody to get out their phones. By the way, if you don't have a phone, it's okay. This is just one way you can interact, but there'll be plenty of other things you can do to write down on paper. Go to menti.com, menti.com, and on your phone, you're going to start to see pretty soon my presentation and some ways that we can interact. For those of you that have gone to menti.com, you need to have a code. And this code is going to come up on your screen in a second and is going to allow you to answer this first poll question that we have. How well does your team embrace change? How well do your teams embrace change? Are they really open to it? Now, when I think of your team, think of the group that you work in every day. Here's the polling question, and you can see the code at the top of your screen. Enter that code into the box. That's going to allow you to interact the entire time. That code is 994229 Again, at menti.com, 994229 and enter in your vote. How well do you embrace change? Not well, pretty well, very well, or my team does it incredibly well, they love it. They can't get enough of change. I'm going to give it another about 30 seconds here. I'm always fascinated, by the way, how people answer this question. So far, pretty well seems to be the lead runner, followed by very well, which is very impressive given the amount of change I think the world has had here in the last year or so. 2020 has been one big year, that's for sure. Okay, how well do your teams embrace change? It seems, as we're still getting a few more people entering in, that the lead here is pretty well. Now, while the numbers keep coming in, and by the way, we are recording this presentation, so you'll see some of the results after. But what I get from this is congratulations, you're like everyone else. Whenever I do this question, the majority of people say that their teams are doing pretty well. No one wants to say not well. And a few people say very well. Our goal today is to get you up to incredibly well. They embrace it, they love it, they're agile, and they're ready for new things. So while some of you are still entering in your numbers, I'm going to move on. We'll capture those votes, but let's get started with the mindset piece. So we're going to play a game, and you're going to need your phone to do this again. This is a game that futurists play. Now, I'm a futurist by trade. I actually studied futuring. It's actually called a degree in foresight. A lot of people on my team teach foresight at the University of Houston in Texas, in Hawaii, in London, in Singapore, around the world. And the goal when you teach change, or it's called foresight, is you teach people how to better anticipate and embrace change so they can activate it with their teams. The first game we play with our first-year students is called In the News. And what this is a game to see how well you are able to detect change that's happening. And it's important to be able to detect change because the more you're able to see it coming, the better you're able to adapt to it. So here's how we're going to play. I am going to share a couple news stories. When I read each news story, I'm going to then ask you to vote whether you think it's true or you think it's false. These are stories of change, and they have implications on our future. So let's get ready and let's do the first one. Have your phones ready to vote. Here we go. So Fitbit, which actually measures your locomotor activity, how much you walk, your run, your heart rate. It also measures neuroactivity in terms of sleep. They have partnered with Netflix, the streaming service, and they've done this with 50 people in London. They've given these people specially outfitted Fitbits that can detect how people are feeling. The reason they're doing this is people that wear these Fitbits, when they actually open up Netflix either on their television, on their iPad, on their phone, Netflix is able to read the sensors in the Fitbit, and they will recommend movies based on how the user or wearer is feeling at that moment. So Fitbit and Netflix have partnered together to create and recommend movies based on how each individual user is feeling at that time. I have my iWatch on, but you get the idea. All right, we're going to vote. Is this true or is this false? Now go to your phones. Let's enter it in again. Is it true that Fitbit and Netflix are partnering? True or false? Okay, so far it's true. Let's see, votes are for true. Half as many people think it's false. I'm gonna sip my coffee here while you guys are still voting. 22, 23 think it's true, 15 think it's false. Is Netflix and Fitbit, are they partnering to detect change and recommend movies based on how you're feeling? And the answer is, it's false. It's false. But this is what's fun. If you guess that it was true, you actually are excited in seeing about the possibilities of change. So that's a good thing. If you said it's false, you're accurate. You probably have a healthy level of skepticism, and you're not quite sure that that's something that is happening, but you know that it is probably possible. So let's talk about it, because there's a lot of implications about this story around detecting behavior, because that is the future of where things are going with sensors and technology. So we already know with a lot of wearables, like when Google came out with Google Glass, that we want to be able to measure and actually capture how people do things, because what we say we do in terms of our behavior and what we actually do are often two different things. So for example, imagine if you have sensor wearables for people on oil rigs, and they can do safety checks. And rather than doing them with paper, we can actually just film them. So we know that when people actually did do the safety check, they did it and they did it correctly. We can capture it. Or like Amazon, how they are actually looking at putting in all kinds of sensors in their warehouses. So they can actually tell when pickers go to pick things off the shelves and put them into baskets, what is the process that people take to pick things and in what order so they can better place them on the shelves. Or maybe, like in the case of some instances early on with Google Glass, it's for drug development in pharmaceutical companies. So teams do not have to be in labs together anymore. They can capture the actual behaviors and process steps of people using wearables to see how they come up with that blockbuster compound in the lab when the teams are all over the world. Or maybe, and this is where really things are going with behavior, this is what I love, it's not wearable, it's audible. And in fact, audible commerce, voice commerce, is seen to be the next big thing of the future. So I don't know how many of you, I wish I could see you and have you vote on this one, how many of you have some kind of intelligent assistant in your home? So for me here, and I'm in New York City right now, we have Alexa all over our home, for better or for worse. Or you could have Google Home or some other type of intelligent assistant that is always listening and ready to respond. That can be good, or we call that clever, or it can be creepy. And the key with good technology and change, or you as innovators need to know this, are you going to be able to use these kinds of new technologies for good or for evil? And let me tell you what I mean. So it's interesting. We use these all the time just to say, Alexa, what's the weather? Alexa, is it going to rain today? Alexa, you know what I mean. We actually use it for our shopping lists. My kids, I've actually caught them using it to cheat on their homework before, to cheat with their math when they were younger. So there's lots of different ways you can use it. But imagine it like this. Based on your behavior, the algorithms get smart and they can start to change your behavior and actually make you do things you might not have otherwise done. So for example, what if I asked Alexa, hey Alexa, when will my coat that I ordered from Patagonia arrive? And Alexa might respond, well, UPS says it's going to arrive on Friday, but you know, you sound stressed. There are other ones available on Amazon that can come tomorrow. Shall I order that for you? You sound stressed. Or how about this one? Alexa, which of the ideas that we just brainstormed in this office setting, and they could either hear you on a Zoom or when you actually do meet in a room, which one do you think is most viable based on your algorithms? And Alexa can tell you which one you should place your bets on. According to my calculations, the ideas you had around personal robotics are the ones you should go with. Or maybe this one. What if someone said, Alexa, who was in this conference room last time and what did they discuss? And Alexa could say, why are you asking? There are lots of different implications around behavior and what voice and wearables can do for us. So the question for us here, and the reason I gave you this news headline is, behavioral technology is a really big change that's coming. The question is, how will you use it? How can you use it to improve the experience you have your customers, your employees, or your clients have? And what concerns could it raise? There's always a positive and a negative that innovators have to think about when it comes to change. Okay, let's do another one. If you got this one wrong, here's your chance to get another one right. Okay, so BMW has partnered with USC, which is the University of Southern California, here in California in the United States. And they're creating a car with over 300 sensors in it. 300 sensors. Now, the purpose of this car is it's designed to make drivers healthier. It's designed to make drivers healthier. That's the purpose of it. The sensors will detect things and it's going to help make you a better, healthier, happier person. Let's go now again to Menti on your phone and let's vote. True or false? BMW and USC are partnering together. I'm going to grab my phone too and see how the votes are coming in. And let's see if it's true or false. Oh, it's totally true is option 1, or please, this is so false. You can't trick me again, Lisa. Come on, it's false. All right, so far, these are believers. I like this group. These are believers. 23 people so far think it is totally true. 10 people think this is false. Okay, you can still put your vote in, but I am going to share with you what I think. BMW and USC partnering together, and the answer is true. It is absolutely true. This is something that started happening a few years ago. And what I love about this example is not what you think it is, but where it could go. So let me show you this. This is Nigel. It's a Mini Cooper, and it is outfitted with over 300 sensors. Now, I'm going to tell you a few examples of how these sensors work, just so you can get a feeling for what happens. So the first thing that you can have happen when you sit down in the car is the sensors will tell you how much weight you have lost or gained since the last time that you drove it. I would hate this car. The second thing is when you put your hands on the steering wheel, there are sensors there, and it can detect your heart rate. And it can detect whether your heart rate goes more up or down. For example, when you pull into your garage versus when you pull into your parking lot at work. It also has sensors that comes out of the ventilation system that can detect in parts per million pollution. And then the GPS can reroute you to a healthier route. So lots of different ways that this car is thinking about healthier. And what's interesting about this is it's kind of cool, right? It's all of a sudden thinking about cars are more than just about mobility systems. Cars can do other things. But there's a lot of different examples of where I've talked about this with pharmaceutical companies. And I deal a lot with pharmaceutical companies in Basel, in Switzerland, for example. And I'll be talking with executives there, and I'll bring up this story. And people will laugh. They'll say, I can't imagine a car being used to distribute our pharmaceuticals, right? How would we embed pharmaceuticals into a car? And then they start brainstorming it. What if you could actually put things into the steering wheel that could be absorbed? What if you could actually do preventative care by having the seat become more of a massage chair? What if pharmaceuticals could actually come in through the ventilation system? So people would be more likely to, quote, take their medicine while they're doing other things like driving to work and get healthier as they do it. These things seem funny now, but very possible in the future. So let's talk about this. I want you to think about, from this news story, what are some of the new business models and partnerships that you could have in the future? What would your company or your organization be doing in 10 years that it doesn't do at all today, right? In the future, BMW might not make cars, or their biggest partner might be a pharmaceutical company. What would that be like? So for those of you that got both of these right, you're a superstar. For those of you that didn't, that's okay. Because what you're thinking about is the skepticism around what can't happen, but we're going to open you up to what can. So let me actually show you some people that are really good at detecting change. And the reason that's important is because if you detect it and you're open to it, you can pivot. The goal with innovation is to be agile. And the best organizations that have been able to pivot, especially during COVID, are the ones that are open to change and they're agile with their teams. So for example, Dyson, James Dyson out of the UK, he realized he's not just a product manufacturing company, but he really has a manufacturing system that could come in handy and create something new. And he made over 10,000 ventilators for the UK, and I'll show you a picture of it here, called Covent, to help during crisis times in COVID. They pivoted to make something new using a system that they already had. Now, in a similar fashion, Giorgio Armani, he said, if I'm not going to be able to sell a lot of fashion, maybe I can make something more fashionable, and made PPE suits for medical examiners and medical care everywhere. Or maybe It's somewhere like here in the United States, ESPN. What do you do if you're a sports network and there's no more sports? Well, you appeal to the sense of nostalgia and you play the greatest hits from the last several decades that appeal to different generations that are still craving sports in any way that they can. Or maybe you're not just responding to COVID at all, but this is just the way that you work. And I want to show you some examples of companies that they'll do well in COVID or the next big thing that happens, because it's just how they work. BMW is a really great example of that. What I love about BMW is their culture is about possibilities, not problems. And that's a big difference, right? People that have healthy skepticism in their cultures think in terms of problems. People with innovation as part of their cultures think in terms of possibilities. BMW knows that in the future, they might not be about selling cars, but they might be about renting engine capacity. Getting people to think differently like that allows them to do like Reach Now and Drive Now, where they actually rent fleets of cars by the hour, or can let you put your fleet, kind of like an Uber, into their system, and they get a piece of it by going through their app. Or maybe you're like Google, and you all know this about their moonshot business, where they have things that are just about wild and crazy ideas, and they're dedicated to it because they don't know the next big thing that'll hit. Or one of my favorites, a publisher here in the United States called Palgrave Macmillan. They have a $100 million venture capital fund. They hired a VC, and they told them, you can only invest in businesses that will put us potentially out of business. And the reason this is incredible is because they're trying to say, you know what, rather than having our competition or another industry take us down, we want to be the ones to practice proactive obsolescence and be able to embrace that change first. So this is really interesting, right? How do we actually get teams to think this way ahead of time? This is that mindset. Well, there's a few things first that actually hold you back. So this is the reality check part of the conversation. Which one of these three things happens to you? It might be all of them, by the way, in your organization. Or maybe not just you, but happens to your team. This is what we see as what we call the three big kind of complexity or anti-innovation traps. The first thing is, within most of our teams or companies, our culture rewards more, doing more, not less or valuable. And let me tell you what I mean. You're rewarded, probably within your teams, for managing more people, more geographies, more regions, larger P&Ls, more products and services, more versus valuable. And when you think about it, on a day-to-day basis, it's not what your teams get done on their to-do list. It's not how much they get done. It's did they get the valuable things done? So how can you really start to focus on less and valuable versus more in busy work? And we're going to talk about that. Simplification is a key thing that has to happen to make space for innovation and change to grow. Okay, the second thing is, when you look at how you spend your time, do you spend most of your time on internal things that are focused on internal work at the company, or external things, dealing with customers, looking at external partnerships, brainstorming big ideas for the future? Most people have traded what we call the telescope for the microscope. Most organizations, when they look at how they spend their time, spend it inside, doing reports, doing status meetings. And what happens is when we spend so much time internal, we forget the reason we exist is external. And then the final thing that is the result of this is we fall into that trap of valuing doing versus thinking. I mean, I want you to think about how much time you spend thinking during the day versus doing. We all talk about how we wish we had more time to think, but the reason we don't is because we think that activity is more valuable than thinking. So how can you flip this to do more valuable, to focus more externally, and to do more thinking? So let me ask you this. Now, this is something I want you to talk or think about. And then we're going to answer this on Menti, on your phone. When and where do you do your best thinking? All right, think about that. When you're coming up with your best, most innovative, creative ideas, when and where do you do your best thinking? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you enter that. Let's go back to our phones here. And I'd like you to just enter in what comes to mind. So for me, for example, it used to be on an airplane, and it's probably running. When I go running, I do a lot of really great, deep thinking. Walking, great, that's another good one. Oh, another person put running, that's fantastic. Bath time, 5 a.m. And I'm an early person too, so that's fantastic. Let's see, being alone. Another airplane, okay. In the car, showering, yep. Bathroom, vacation. Yeah, isn't that interesting? On vacation is a big one for everybody. Jogging when it's raining. Oh, that's me too. That's interesting. Let's see, listening to music. Biking, gaming. Oh, I like that one. That's a great one. I'll just give it a couple more seconds here. Journaling. Boy, that's a really effective way to do some deep thinking. I like that one a lot. Early morning coffee. Really great. As these are coming in, and these are really, really great answers, I'd like you to think about, what do these things have in common? What do these things have in common? One of the things that I think you'll see, and you're welcome to type this into your chat, your answer, is that a lot of these are when we're alone. They are when we have quiet and we're alone. And what's interesting about this too is the large majority of these, your answer is not at work. And this happens every time. When we ask people, when and where do you do your best thinking? Very few people, if at all, say work. Now, isn't that interesting? What I want you to also consider, especially if you're a manager or leader on this webinar today, is everyone has different ways that they think best. So we need to give everybody that space or that atmosphere, whether it's listening to music. I do not think well with music, by the way. I need to be quiet, but some people on my team love music. Or some people need to get outside. That's why a lot of people have walking meetings now. You need to give people space to think the way that they think best. But more importantly this is our problem with our culture of meetings. We think that having a meeting to brainstorm is the best way to come up with new ideas. The reality is, and the science tells us, that we come up with the best ideas typically when we're alone, the aha moment. But we build the best ideas when we're together. So it's really, really important for us to have that alone time to come up with new ideas and then have meetings to build on them together. Okay, now if you think that not at work is how most people come up with their best ideas, what are they doing at work? Well, here's some interesting statistics for you to take a look at. There was a study that was done by Bain not long ago, Bain Consulting. And when they asked people, they asked thousands of people, how do you spend your day? What are your main activities? Here's what they said. On average, people spend 45% of their day in meetings, which I'm not surprised by, right? And now it's probably even worse. We're so on Teams and Zoom and WebEx, and we're just consumed by meetings. That's how we collaborate now online. 23% of the time was spent doing email. Now, I was actually surprised by this because I spend a lot of time on email, and I run an innovation and simplicity company. But the reality is, I thought that number would be higher. The data only reflects your activity between 9 and 5, 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. So of course, I think if you actually looked at the real workday, which is usually before 9 and well after 5 o'clock, A lot of that is email time, okay? This is the really interesting stuff. 18% of the time is spent doing unproductive work. Now, I'm not sure all of it's unproductive because some of that is, when people just need to take a break and they go online and maybe they do social media or they take a walk, whatever it is. That can be very productive too. The bigger thing is to think about the 14%. 14% of the time on average is what people spend doing meaningful, read innovation work. Now, meaningful work are the things that help us be more satisfied at work. They're what we were hired to do in the first place. I don't think many of you were hired to do meetings and emails, unless I'm wrong. They're things that add value to the company and to ourselves. That's only 6.5 hours a week. I don't know many of us that can afford to have our teams only working part of one day a week on meaningful things, but that's what happens. So we need to shift this, and we need to start really thinking about what skills and tools do we need to give our teams and ourselves so we can be more innovative and embrace that change. So let's actually think about that. I'm going to give you a quiz. You're really going to like this. Now, if you have your phone, you're going to be able to vote on this and tell me how you did at the end. If you don't, I still want you to have like a pen and paper nearby, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 8 statements. Each of them has a different role in innovation. And I want you to think about the team that you work with every day, how you would answer these statements. You're going to answer either a yes or a no to the statements. So here's a few things. First of all, when you, again, read these statements, and I'll show you 8 statements, you want to answer yes or no. If the first thing that comes to your mind when I read this statement is maybe, not sure if it's a yes or a no, that's a no. Unless it's a real definitive yes, it's a no. The other thing is, this is about you and your team, not the overall organization. You and your team every day, the people you work with every day is really the culture that you experience at work. Okay, here we go. 8 statements. How would you answer them, yes or no? And we're going to add up our yeses and nos at the end. Here we go. Statement 1. People on my team actively push the boundaries of what's possible, and they apply critical trends to our business to stay ahead. So just write down or remember in your head, is that a yes or a no? Number 2, people on my team, we're comfortable asking provocative or even unsettling questions to stretch thinking. Okay, number 3, when faced with challenges, we can think on our feet and we can nimbly or easily change direction, right? We're agile. Number 4, we do not give up easily on our ideas when we encounter adversity, and my team, they generally see them through. Number 5, we're constantly looking forward to the next 5 to 10 years. We actively seek solutions on how to stay ahead of the curve. Number 6, we purposefully hire people with diverse backgrounds, and we create project teams with a variety of disciplines and experiences, right? People with different thinking styles and that look and act and come from different cultures. Number 7, we're great at looking at what other industries that are either adjacent or completely unrelated to ours are doing. We see how innovative they are, and we apply their best practices to our work for something totally new. Number 8, last one, we always encourage people to eliminate redundancies, rules, or processes that create complexity so they can focus on more important work. Okay, of your 8 statements, I want you to add up, how many did you answer yes to? Right? How innovative is your team? So out of 8 statements, for example, if you answered yes to 1 or 2, That's status quo, right? You're probably very protective and very cautious. We need to stretch you in terms of your thinking. 3 to 5, you're a risk taker. You're optimistic, you're competitive. 6 to 8, you are a change maker, right? Send me your resume, I'm gonna hire you, you're amazing, you make the markets. I wanna know, and we're gonna go back to Menti again, how many statements did you say yes to? How did we do here? Enter in now on your phone. How many did you say yes to? Between 1 and 8. How many statements did you say yes to? We're going to vote, and let's let that answer come in. How many statements did you say yes to? Not many people voting right now. Actually, I have to refresh it. Forgive me. I think there's something wrong with the Menti here. I'm going to actually move on to the next slide while Menti's stuck, so I apologize. How many statements do you say yes to? Let me tell you something. On average, the answers that we get are between 3 and 4. 3 and 4. And the reason for that is because most people don't view themselves as that innovative. And what's interesting is most people don't have the time to do it. So this is interesting. How innovative is your team? When you look at those statements of what you said yes or no to, these are the statements or the skills that tied to each of those. So if you said no or yes to number 1, that was about strategic imagination. Number 2, curiosity. Number 3 was about agility. Number 4 was about resilience. Number 5 was about being future focused. Right? You don't look at just the next year, it's the next 5 to 10. Number 6 was inclusion. Number 7, creative problem solving. And number 8 was about focus and simplicity. Okay, so what your job is not for you as an individual to get all 8 to be yes. It's your job as a leader or as a team to get all 8 together. No one is going to get all 8 right, but as a team, you want to have all of those skills together. Okay, let's go to the next thing. Right now, what I'm going to do is I want to give you innovative techniques to ignite change. So here's what's going to happen. I'm about to give you about 20 techniques that are going to blow your mind. They're going to help you personally every day be able to better adapt and be more innovative. Your goal when I go through all of these techniques is to just think about what one would you like to try first? You can't try all of them. You're going to want to. Which one would you try first? Okay, let's get started. The first technique is called Ask Killer Questions. And what's really great about this is this gets to the curiosity question. So if you didn't get that one as a yes, this technique will help you. The reason curiosity is such a big deal is because in the future, asking the right questions is going to be more valuable than finding answers. Now, why is that important? We have so much technology, right? Artificial intelligence. We can get the answers we need. Machines are for answers. Humans are for questions. If you can get any answer you want, are you asking the best question possible? The World Economic Forum even identified curiosity as one of the key skills for kids in the future, so they can be better equipped to have a job in the next 10 years. So let me tell you what I mean. A killer question is something that really ignites our frontal lobes. It's something different. It's not boring. It's provocative. It might make you uncomfortable. So for example, here's one. If you had to give away your products and services for free right now, you're no longer allowed to charge for them, how else could you make money? That's a really cool question to ask your team. If we had to give it away right now, how else would we make money? What else could we do? Here's another example of a killer question. What question would you love to ask clients or employees, but you are too scared or embarrassed to ask it? Right? This gets to our issue of fear. A lot of the things that hold us back from change are fear. And then finally, I love this question. If you had to eliminate 25% of what we do every day, right? The boss is walking in, we have to eliminate it, we're no longer allowed to. What would you eliminate and why? Right? That's a simplicity question. The thing that killer questions have in common is they are open-ended, they are provocative, and they get people to think in new and different ways. So here's what I'd like you to consider if you're going to ask killer questions. What killer question would you love to ask? Bonus, who would you love to ask it to? Okay, that's killer questions. That's our first technique. Here's another one, and I love this one. For a lot of you that feel stuck, this technique is called impossible to possible, and it's about overcoming barriers and coming up with new solutions to reinvent your business. A lot of times when we get into a room or we brainstorm on a phone call, everyone comes up with the same ideas we've already heard. There's actually an arc to brainstorming. The first third of a brainstorm is always the ideas you already know. Then it's the ideas that push us a little bit further. And then when people start to feel uncomfortable, right, they're starting to get bored, they leave the room, that's the last third where the ahas happen. We rarely get to the last third because we run out of time. We're too time crunched. Impossible to possible accelerates this process because it gives you a structured way to overcome barriers and roadblocks. Next time you're with a team, if you're the leader, I'd like you to think about a problem, a process, a product that you haven't been able to improve. And what you're going to do is have each person on your team, if you actually can get physically together, it's great to pair people up. And if not, you can have them do this in advance and then bring their list to a meeting. They should list all the impossibles they think that are happening around a process or a problem. It's things like, we'll never be able to, our company will never allow us to, customers would never believe that we would, and list all the assumptions you have around what's impossible on the topic, right? Just pick one topic and have everyone list what's impossible. Okay, here's the magic. Then what happens is you have everyone give away their list to someone else. And the reason why is called cognitive distance. We are better at solving other people's problems than solving our own. We are much better at helping other people solve their problem because we don't have assumptions around it, right? We can tell them why they need to do something. So what you want to do is give away the impossibles and have somebody else make them possible. And what's really cool about that is they will. So swap your impossibles and make them possible and see what new and disruptive things you can do. Okay, next technique. And this one I think you're really, really going to love. This is called kill a stupid rule. Now, I would love to see in the chat box how many people here would love to kill a stupid rule at their work. This is one of the favorite techniques, not just among teams, but among CEOs, because it's about simplicity and it's about effectiveness. The great thing about simplicity is, frankly, it's free. It costs you nothing to get rid of things often, but we just don't give people the empowerment to do it. We always think about more, not less. Here's what you do. Next time you have a meeting, ask people if they could kill any 2 rules at work that would help them be more innovative, more productive. What would they be and why? Here's what's going to happen. If you give your team, for example, 15 minutes, they will want more time at the end of 15 minutes because they're going to come up with so many things. It's really incredible. We actually got a team of about 800 people together from Pfizer. They're leaders, fantastic people. And we put everyone in different rooms. We broke them into smaller groups. And after 15 minutes, each of these 8 groups of 100 wanted more time. By the end of an hour, we had identified hundreds of rules and killed almost 100 of them that got them back almost $250,000 in dozens of hours that was being wasted on unnecessary work. So kill a stupid rule. All right, let's do the next one. All right, this is one of my favorites. Become a chief simplifier. I mean, I'd love to see how many of you would love to become chief simplifier at your work. All of us should be thinking about becoming chief simplification officers, not just the leaders of a team, but every person on a team. The key is, how do you do it? So I'm going to give you some tips or tricks that are going to help you. Remember that pie chart earlier that showed how much time we spend in meetings and emails? How to shift that time to different things, or when you are in meetings, emails, or doing reports and processes, how we can make them more effective. Here are some of the best tips and tricks that I've seen from organizations around the world in areas that bog you down every single day. First of all, email. If you want to improve email, one tip you can do is called inbox zero. Your goal is to get down to 0 emails in your inbox every day. And you do that by creating very simple actions. You touch every email once and you decide whether you're going to file it, you're going to answer it, or you're going to delete it. The second thing you can do is you can create a tagging protocol. This is something that's used around the world in a lot of military groups. And they decide in their subject line, they all agree on what they will tag their emails to be. Is it an action? Is it a decision? Is it a read only? And you're allowing people to be able to filter their emails to the most important things first. Another one that I love is number 3 here, and it's called bluff. This is a one that's used by the military, both in the United States and I know in Canada, as well as parts of Europe. Bluff stands for bottom line up front. You know, too often in emails, we send out an email and we lead up to what we're trying to tell people. Why? Why don't we start with the bottom line up front and allow people then to read after if they need to? And then finally, number 4, NNTR. This is one of my favorite email ones, and it comes from the Chief Simplification Officer at Merck Pharmaceuticals in Canada. They were completely overwhelmed with email, and most of the emails were unnecessary. You know the emails that you get that people have where they say, thanks, got it, I'll get back to you, those kind of unnecessary emails. They decided that rather than telling people when they send out FYI communications, they'll tell people NNTR, which means in the subject line, no need to respond. If it's something that was just meant to be a one-way communication or an article or something they could read later, you don't need to let me know that you got it. NNTR means no need to respond. And they cut their email traffic down by 18% just by implementing that in the subject line. Okay, those are email tips. Now, what I'd love to try are meeting tips. Here we go. For meeting tips, what we want to be able to do is make them more effective. The first thing you can do is do a meeting audit. Much like kill a stupid rule, why don't you kill a stupid meeting? We did this once with Sprint Telecom here in the United States, and we picked major business units that were overwhelmed with meetings, and we had them and their leaders get in a room. And we had them list all the meetings they have during a year, weekly, monthly, quarterly, episodic ones. And their goal was to cut 50% of their meetings. They didn't cut 50% of them, but they did cut 23% of them. And that gave, on average, 2 to 3 hours back per person that they otherwise would have spent in unnecessary zombie meetings. You can also declare meeting bankruptcy. This is a really cool one. I love meeting bankruptcy. There are a lot of companies that at the beginning of the year will wipe their recurring calendars clean. And for you to be able to put a recurring meeting back on the calendar, you have to be able to fight and tell people why it's really justified. So declare bankruptcy, clear the calendars, and make people fight to get those meetings back on the calendar and prove their worth. Okay, next, change the frequency. You know, a lot of meetings start where they're weekly because the project's just getting started. But then the project's almost done. Do we have to keep these meetings going? Can we make them from weekly to monthly? How do you change the frequency? If you can't change the frequency, change the length, or what we call going on a time diet. And I love this one. Going on a time diet is because, well, especially now that we're remote, 30 is the new 60, 15 is the new 30. How can you reduce the length of many of your meetings and set the defaults to be shorter? Number 5, who's the D, or what we call who's the decision maker. At a lot of organizations like Bristol Myers Squibb and some organizations within Google, they do not have people accept a meeting notice unless there's a designated decision maker in that meeting. Remember, emails are for information, meetings are for decisions. And then the last one I love, which are drop-off meetings. Think of your meetings like a funnel, where the agenda is for, if it's a weekly agenda, the most people on your team. And then as it gets more focused in terms of topics, like a carpool, more and more people drop off until it's just the very core at the end. Being uninvited to a meeting should become a badge of honor within your organization. It isn't mine, because your time is too valuable to be wasted in something you're not needed at. Okay, that's meetings. Now, processes. This is one of my favorites. If you have a process that is too complex, is too hard, how do you improve it? You can do like what, again, Pfizer did. They took processes and they broke them down into very, very detailed parts. And then with every single step, they asked the team, who would miss this step if we got rid of it? If the answer is no one, they got rid of it. You can identify redundant workload between different groups and assign it. You could do a committee or a report audit, right? Why just kill stupid meetings? Kill stupid committees and reports. Another one that I love, and a lot of groups do this. We actually just talked about this with a bank here in the United States, it's Fidelity Investments. Running a work hackathon. We do a lot of tech hackathons. Why don't we hack our work? How could we use some of those workarounds or those cheap processes that we do and make those the main processes? And the final one that I love, number 5, comes from Google, and it's called Cut the Crap Committees. At a lot of groups within Google, they have these kind of rogue teams that are assigned to each month look at what their team is doing as if they were an observer from the outside and identify all the crap that's happening and recommend to the team to get rid of it. All right, here's what I'd love to hear from everyone here. Which technique would you love to try first? Now I want you to think about this. Which technique would you love to try first? Is it killing stupid rules? Is it asking killer questions? Is it, I don't know, something with email? Which one would you love to do first? And I'm gonna allow everybody here to actually type it in and see what the answer is that you get. An NTR, killing stupid rules, I love that. Bottom line up front. It looks like email in general, any of the email rules seems to be a good one. You know, while the answers are coming in, it's interesting. I do this a lot. I ask people at the end, which one will you try first? And the reason for this is because there's a cognitive science behind it. There's so many tips that I gave you here. And the reason why is you don't necessarily need a process for innovation, you need a toolkit. And everyone's culture and where they are in their journey is different. So I want to give you things that you'll try first. And by having you commit to it here, those are usually the things that will map to your brain in terms of trying them next, right? You have more of a sense of commitment if you have to actually write it down or verbalize it or put it here on a slide. The other thing is, once you try these and you get started, you'll see how easy it is. So you can see here, there's a lot that you have in common with others. And it'll be really interesting if you do them with your team, if you share the results that you get and see how you can improve it and try more. So it seems here when I look at the results, killing stupid rules is a big one. I'm not surprised by that. A lot of killing stupid rules. Meetings, emails, cutting meetings, emails. We've got some impossible to possibles. That's really great. Asking questions at many drop-off meetings, stopping meetings, reducing meetings, cutting meetings. So a lot with meetings. So usually this is what happens. People always say killing stupid rules because that's an easy one. Then they talk about things like meetings and emails. If you just do these things that you wrote down here and try one of them, you will start to get 1 or 2 hours back each week for things that matter. Remember, time is a non-renewable resource. You will never get it back. So it is really key that you protect it as much as you can. That's the first thing that you need with innovation, is that time to think about things that matter. So we are actually at time, and I want to be able to give people here the opportunity to ask me questions. So what we're going to do now for the next 15 to 30 minutes is I want to be able to open it up. And I want to actually send you to the next slide here. This is the AMA portion, which is Ask Me Anything. Do you have any questions that you want to ask me about innovation? Do you have any comments about what was presented here today in terms of how you feel about it, even if you disagree with me? Go ahead and answer that in here. I'd love to see what people think and how I can answer that. We're going to submit things into here. We're going to actually put in anything. Here's one. Does NNTR work? It does. Indeed, it does. NNTR is the one, no need to respond. And what I really liked about NNTR was how simple it was and how it gave people permission. It gave people permission to not feel that they had to respond to things, especially from their boss. So NNTR is really, really helpful. If you want to type in any other comments, questions, concerns, you can type them in here. And you are also welcome, I'm going to go to chat here to take some of the questions here. I'll take the one that just came up here. Let me look at one in the chat. Do you think working from home will change time allocation? This is interesting. And what do I think that looks like? So one of the things that's interesting, working from home is going to change the allocation of that time chart from before. One of the things that we're finding when we do research on remote work versus in-person work, people are more productive from home. They are working longer hours. However, they are feeling more disconnected than ever in terms of from a human standpoint. And we are readjusting our norms at work. And by norms, I mean trust. So what's really interesting is when I give speeches, I also give a talk about, it's called Stop Meeting and Start Collaborating. And it's really cool tools about how do you get people to have better, more effective meetings, and what are the tools you can use to make them more collaborative versus status meetings. And what I find about that is setting norms around how we communicate is very helpful for teams, right? Just Zoom and technology is not a norm or a strategy. It's, are we on video or not? How do we communicate in a variety of ways so we make sure we're more inclusive, especially for introverts? How can we better put time boundaries so we're not working 24 hours a day? There's a lot of fear and lack of trust in remote work because we're not physically together anymore and we can't read the nonverbals. So I think that we are going to now start to see a lot of burnout and a lot of fatigue, and norms are going to need to be put in place for remote work because it's not going away. Okay, lots of questions coming in here. Can bluff be used in our personal life? Yes, I love this. You know, it's interesting, when I wrote my last 2 books, Kill the Company and Why Simple Wins, I always wanted to include a personal chapter, and they're about how you can apply the tools. I'm really practical and all about tools to your personal life. And my publisher said no. I was really mad. They said, no, this is a business book, keep it to business. And I think that's wrong. And by the way, my next book, I'm going to make it more about all the tools that you can use for work and life, because frankly, there's not much of a difference anymore. Work and life from home they're blended. So I think Bluff is something you most definitely can use at home. Bottom line up front, I just think the delivery in personal situations might need to be a little bit thought through and softer, right? People at home don't work for you. So we might need to take emotions into account. Another one here, will working from home enhance thinking? We talk a lot about as a futurist, the future of work. And COVID wasn't really a black swan. There were a lot of predictions that a viral event would happen, but what it was and the magnitude wasn't predicted. So the future of work a lot of people are talking about right now is how remote work is a lot of productive work. It's task-oriented, we can get things done, we're very productive. And then the future, if we go to a hybrid environment, I mean, we will meet in person again, that is going to look a little different. And maybe when we get together, that's where the real collaborative, innovative work happens. So imagine offices restructuring. And the work environment's a little different because we don't have to go to an office every day anymore. The only reason you go to the office is collaborative work. Every office starts to look like an innovation space or an innovation lab, because that's the reason we come together now, is to build ideas, not just to think them up. Okay, let me look at a couple other ones here. A lot of this sounds good in theory, but is really difficult to achieve due to bureaucracy. I couldn't agree more. Let me talk about the fear. Fear and risk. If your boss isn't on board, a lot of it's not going to happen. That's why I think a lot of these things that I gave you around simplicity are important, because it's really great to talk about innovation. It's also very annoying, because it's like when the boss comes in and says, everyone, why don't you be more innovative? Well, what does that mean? How? Until you simplify, you don't have the space for innovation to happen. Until we get rid of unnecessary work, we don't have space for the necessary, valuable work to occur. So if I had to tell you one technique to try, if you could only try one ever in your life, do kill a stupid rule. And if you have a culture that's about fear, what you do is you just frame it differently with your boss or your leader. It's not just about killing rules, it's about getting rid of inefficiencies, right? Call it something different. But if it's about effectiveness, bosses get on board. If it's about killing rules, they might get a little defensive. And you might not be able to kill their rules up front. You might have to look at other people's rules first. Okay, let me look at another one here. Let's see. How do you deal with fear to be an outlier when you introduce new staff? I'm not sure exactly what that one means, but fear is exists everywhere. I think how we use new staff is actually, we underutilize them. One thing that's really interesting about new staff is they come in with no assumptions. They're blind to the politics. And I always tell people in brainstorms, especially leadership brainstorms, they'll say, well, who else should we include? We need some outside thinking. Or killer questions. Who could we ask that would come up with something totally new? Ask the people that are new to the organization, because they don't have the politics or they don't know how you do things yet. And often those people come into the company and they think, why do you do it like that? That's not how I used to do it at my old company. And you can learn something totally new. All right, let me take a couple other ones. Should these techniques be used within free time or above priority before we start important work? I think maybe it's within free time, but I think a lot of it is, why don't you try them personally? What are the things that you could try personally before you start trying them with your team? The key thing about innovation is you start with simplicity and you start within your sphere of control. That's where I think a lot of these questions are coming from. The problem with a lot of change and innovation within companies is we try to do it within our sphere of influence. And if you look at it within the sphere of control, the things that you can do or your team can do every day versus the organization, like trying to change travel policies and expense reports, and that's going to take forever to change that. But killing stupid rules or questioning assumptions in your own team, that's something you have more likely control over and you can start to get time back. Let me look at some of these other ones here. What is the opposite of a meeting diet and how to achieve it? I'm not sure I'm reading it correctly, but a time diet, the idea was to eliminate wasted time. And so I think what we can all do is evaluate our meetings and the length of time that we have around them. And what's interesting about that, and Aisha, I see you there. If you have any insights on that too, that would be interesting. I think what needs to happen is we always have a default to be longer than we need. So what we're seeing within remote work now is it's not about 60 minutes, it's about 30 minutes. Okay, let's take a couple other ones here. Working from home will enhance thinking. I completely agree with that. Let me go to a couple other ones on this side. If I move my screen over. Okay, here. There, now I can read it. Any advice on rolling some of these out to my team? And then, does innovation matter? Boy, is that an incredible question. I love that. Well, thank you for attending this talk, even if you don't think it matters. Let me start with that one actually while I'm talking to it. How does innovation matter? Does innovation matter? Innovation definitely matters, because if you don't innovate, right, someone will put you out of business. That's the proactive obsolescence. So, imagine if you just decided not to change during COVID, right? If you decided you're not going to put the technology in place for remote work, I'm not sure how you would compete. So the idea with innovation is not just to come up with something groundbreaking, but it's about continual improvement. So if you can make sure that your teams are able to embrace change even in small increments, that's going to keep you afloat. The more innovative and risk-taking you can be, the more you will lead the industry. Okay, any advice on rolling out some of these with your team? Some of it that I said was, first of all, I think you start with yourself first. If you are a leader, try these exercises on yourself first. Then you do it just with your immediate team, always within your sphere of control, and then you do your sphere of influence. That's the way you want to do it. The reason for that is because if you do this with your team and you think too outside of what you have control over, you won't be able to get any results. So let me give you an example. When we did Kill a Stupid Rule, which is a great one again to do with a team, it's always successful when the boss is prepared to actually kill rules and does. When it fails is when you get a boss in a room and they brainstorm rules to kill, and then the boss says, thanks, I'll think about this, and then doesn't kill any rules. People do not like that boss ever again. So if you're going to kill stupid rules, you've got to kill a rule. Now, here's something to think about. Here's an out for you or for your boss if they get nervous. I always tell people when I do something like to do with change or kill a stupid rule, I say, you know what, we don't have to kill it right now, but we can just pilot or experiment with getting rid of it for a month. That makes the boss feel better. Oh, we're not going to permanently kill it. We can just try this. And that works. And I did this once with a publishing company, McGraw-Hill. They had a rule that they had these monthly operating reports, MOPs, monthly operating reports, MORs. And everyone hated this report. They hated it. And they told the boss that they hated this report during this meeting. And the boss looked at the group and he said, I also hate this report. And by the way, I created it. And everyone got very nervous. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said, oh my gosh, I just told the boss I hate his report. But the boss said, I hate it too. I'm nervous to get rid of it because it tells me a lot of interesting KPIs. Let's experiment getting rid of it for 3 months. If no one misses it, then we will kill it. And at the end of 3 months, no one missed the report. They had the data in other places and they killed it. So that's a way you can roll it out. Aisha, I'm just going to take a few more here if that's okay. Okay, great. I see you head nodding. I still love the one, does innovation matter? That's my favorite question ever on a presentation. Here's someone, let's see. Some of the techniques may not fit based on working style. Oh, I'll wait till that one comes back again. Some of the techniques might not fit based on working style of your team. I can imagine that, yes. Let's see. It might upset them if they don't respond or meet to their own legacy. Very true. A lot of the things that I did here can be very political and can make people uncomfortable. By the way, change doesn't happen unless you have discomfort. That's how it happens. Change happens when there's discomfort. So the one thing I just want you all to think about here is you have to start thinking about change as contrast, not conflict. Those are different. So conflict means right and wrong, good and bad. Contrast is what we call productive agitation. And so your job is to have the productive agitation, right, that challenges assumptions, not make it about ego. One more thing I'll say about that is when it comes to simplicity and getting rid of things, like when I mentioned getting rid of the boss's operating report, there is a lot of ego involved. Because remember, no one thinks they create complexity. They think everybody else does it. Everyone else is the problem. You're not the problem. So when you're trying to get rid of someone else's rules, even though they might have outlived their time, you might just need to be careful how you phrase it. That's all. Okay, how do you make innovation instill at an early age? I'm not sure if you mean an early age within your culture or as a person. I'm going to say as a person, because I just want to talk about this quickly. I have a very big soft spot. I have a very big will to want to change education. And I can only really speak from what I know of a lot of education systems, certainly in the United States. I have a senior in high school. I have someone who's almost 18. And then I have a daughter who's 14, and that's our 8th grade here. And I am shocked by the amount of skills that they don't learn for the future. And we call these, what I think are important, aren't just things like science and tech and English and math, very important. But what we call those are I skills, right? They build depth. But the future is about power skills, or we call T-shaped people. And the T is about breadth. So if we have machines and algorithms that are about subject matter expertise, the difference, the leaders are the ones that can add to it on top. So how you get innovation going at an early age or with a team is with power skills. These are things we need to start building in education earlier and at work. Those are skills like creative problem solving, agility, resilience, curiosity. We don't build those enough in our education system. And that's why when you go to hire people right out of school, it's difficult because a lot of people today, especially in a millennial trend, are more apt to want to be told what to do versus feeling that they have the freedom or empowerment, frankly, to be able to come up with something new. So as leaders, if we can't change the education system right now and build T-shaped skills at an earlier age, we need to do it with people younger in our organizations. These are the people that are, for example, the scientists that are really good at a topic, but these are the people that get those scientists to connect the dots across different business units. Okay, let me just take a couple more here, Aisha. I have another one that just came in that talked about which is more important, simplicity or innovation? The answer is yes. They are both important. I frankly think simplicity is more important. And the reason I say that again is simplicity is the front end of innovation. So if you're operating with complexity, you can't compete and you can't innovate. So I think it's really important for you to do some of those chief simplicity officer techniques at the end, emails, meetings, get rid of the crap. Frankly, also with simplicity, it's nice because it's free. It's something you don't have to hire people to simplify. You can do it on your own. Your bosses typically love you because you're saving time and money. You look like a hero. I don't know anyone that got punished for saving time and money, you know? And the other thing that's really interesting if you're a boss is simplicity creates transparency. If you operate with simplicity, there's nowhere to hide. Usually people that like complexity are the ones that aren't good at their job. People that like simplicity are the ones that are good at their job. Now, there is necessary complexity, by the way. Not everything is simple, but not everything has to be overly complex. And that's really where the good people come in. They know how to make things as simple as possible. Okay. Aisha, I think we only have time for a couple more. Do you mind if I take one or two more?
Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, thank you. I look for you to head nod, so thank you so much for doing that. Okay, let me get this here. All right, another one that just came in. All right, which of the email techniques are the most are most successful? I think a lot of the problems within our inbox are that they are clogged with unnecessary things. So I think one of the things you want to think about individually is before you send an email, first of all, is it necessary? Remember, emails are for information, meetings and phone calls are for decisions and conversation. So if it's something that could be more easily solved, maybe in a chat or by picking up the phone, do that. You know, it's interesting. I called someone the other day and they were shocked. They hadn't picked up their phone in so long because everything's been a Zoom meeting, right? Like someone called me. I can't believe it. I can't see you on a screen. And we handled in 10 minutes what normally would have taken so much time to schedule a Zoom meeting, to open up a line, to pick up the phone. The other thing is when you do email, can you make sure that only the necessary people are on it? I appreciate, and this is where you know you have a really great innovative organization, I appreciate not being included in things. So another one that came in here to me separately was, how do you measure effectiveness? And it depends. I think some of the hard things are time solved, time saved, dollars saved, number of rules killed, amount of satisfaction at your job. But I think another thing is less meetings. When people are happy that they're uninvited to things, a reduction in recurring meetings and reports. So we want to start putting it as leaders metrics to measure less, not more. So I'd love you to think about that. How do we measure less, not more? Okay, and one more thing here. I think this is the last one we have here, Aisha. I've gotten to almost every other one, unless there's one that I missed here. In the new world of work, let me see how they wrote it to me. They sent this to me privately. In the new world of work, what's going to change? Okay, I think we talked about this a little bit. I think the future of work is interesting, will be hybrid. And the reason why is because we've seen how productive people can be at home. And I think that companies are going to say that this is a really great work-life benefit. We can work from home. I feel it, right? I see my kids so much more now. I have more flexibility. I actually work out during the week sometimes. It's true. I actually get it done. Don't just talk about it. So that's neat. But the real reason why companies are going to do it and allow you to work from home is because it saves them so much money. Real estate costs are going to change dramatically. People are going to be giving and downsizing their offices. They're not going to need to instill so much technology at work. You're going to shift that cost to you at home. And so that's going to be really interesting. There's going to be a big shift towards working from home. That's going to set up new norms of how we interact with each other. The problem is that all the informal conversation is going away. And that's causing a lot of issues at work for people in terms of how they collaborate. And it's causing a big wave globally around depression. And what we need to think about more at work is some of the power skills and softer skills that help people better collaborate, better critical think, and better connect. In the future, there's a lot of talk that when we actually do have events and we get together, they're going to be much more powerful and possibly much more exclusive. So for example, the days of 5,000 salespeople getting together for an awards meeting annually, I don't want to say might be over, but they might not be as common. And it's more likely you'll have smaller groups of 100 people. And when those people get together, the conversations are deeper, more meaningful, and cover more topics. Aisha, I think that's the last question that we have. Unless other people have put them in. Innovation matters, you need the leaders. Oh, this one more, Aisha, I'm sorry, this is about metrics. About needing to encourage a culture and limit innovation. This really gets to the point of metrics. I would love everyone, one last note. When you leave here, not just thinking about what is it that you want to try, but how do you want to measure the effectiveness of it? Right? You can't just say it worked because you thought so. What kind of impact did it make? And in fact, for everyone here, I want to help make an impact. And Aisha, I will make sure that I know you have the recording, that everyone will get the outputs here of what was on screen so they can share it with their teams and maybe help them prove that they need to do this with their own leaders. But I do want to offer to people, if they do want to email me, I would be happy to send to them one of the tools that we talked about here today. Impossible to Possible, this is just the worksheet, but it comes with facilitation guides and tools. And it lets people actually try a structured way of overcoming innovation challenges. So if you email me, and I'm going to show you right here, my email here is on the bottom. And it's lbodell@futurethink.com. That's lbodell@futurethink.com. Send us an email, and I'll make sure that the person designated on my team who runs our products will get you the Impossible to Possible tool, and you can try that. So I hope that this today helps you change the way that you work. I hope everyone here, Aisha, learned something new, and I hope that everybody gets to the work that matters and starts innovating right away. It's such a pleasure.
Lisa, as you can see, we have 57 participants who haven't logged off. That shows that everybody's interested.
Thank you.
And I must say, how long was it? An hour and a half. It flew by, really.
Oh, I'm so glad. That's a long time. So it's nice everyone gave me their time today.
And I must say, what resonated with me is actually the impossible to possible, and looking forward to get the toolkit. On behalf of OIA, I would like to thank you for this wonderful, wonderful webinar.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's such a pleasure. And everyone was very, very participative, which makes it easy for me as a presenter. So I'm very grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Okay, you as well. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.